back to another CSGO edition of our esports content here at FSI. I am Hold the Door DFS. We are looking tomorrow actually at a 4-game slate, which is the biggest we have had since the DreamHack Masters has started. One big difference tomorrow is that every game is a best of one. So I think there's a couple ways to approach that a little bit differently than you might have in a best of three. The first thing being that I think there is going to be a wide variance in one map. We know the bottom one, bottom 4 or 5 player can just have the best game on the map, and certain map choices will probably really dictate maybe some of the performances of these players. So I do highly suggest really getting into some of the map pool breakdowns and who you think will likely be the last map. I know it is definitely a little bit more difficult when you are only getting one of the maps after all the bans. So I think it's still a chance that you could predict it and have some high probability. But I think if you just still base a lot of your builds off of slightly with the odds, a little bit less than normal on the odds, but more on the underlying statistics for the players in the most recent forms, I think that's probably your best bet. One thing I'll be doing less of tomorrow is using a punt play that would normally benefit from a potential 2-0 sweep, because it's just going to be one game. So, I mean, even if you're taking the cheapest player on the highest favorite, there's a good chance that they will not pay off their value tomorrow. So I'm hoping that that is maybe a route that casual players take that just normally play CSGO, and you just deploy the same strategy on every slate. This is definitely a different animal. So we will go over the odds for each of them. We also will touch on the turbo or the late slate we have that has 3 matches as well. So 7 in total tomorrow, which is awesome. So we'll start with Vitality and ENTS. ZywOo at 8,800. I feel like is a little bit underpriced comparative to the field. Him and Alu are both really the best 2 plays in this game, and they are priced appropriately. I do think the pricing overall today is just a little bit better. Better than a couple of the last few days where salary didn't really matter. So Vitality is a -160 favorite against ENTS here. So I think ZywOo will be a really popular cash play, regardless whether you think Vitality wins or not. And again, the win-loss doesn't really matter here as much as the performance of the individual players. And this one I expect to be competitive. So I think ZywOo and Alu are both viable. I also like Shax at 6,600. Sergey at 6,800 is viable. I mean, the gap down to these rest of these guys is pretty crazy. Yampy was 7,800 last slate, and now he's down to 64. And he had a lot of ownership. He was 90% owned in the $1,000 GPP. So I think as an underdog, if it's somebody that you're considering playing, I think he's definitely viable. That's about it. Typically for a team like Vitality anyway, I don't really like anybody other than ZywOo and maybe Shax. Similar to ENTS, Alu, and then it kind of gets pretty hairy after that. So those would be my 2 favorite targets from the game, which is probably where most of the ownership would be from this game. But I don't think you need to force any of the other players in this matchup. Dignitas and Moose. Moose is playing, I think, the games without borders right now against Navi. Not going very well. But we do know that teams that have been off the server for a while, like Dignitas, has not played, I don't think, since Road to Rio at this level, that there's definitely some rust. So, and I see Mouse Sports coming in as -215. This is one that I can see potentially Mouse relatively running over them a little bit unless the map selection doesn't go in their favor. With Ropes at 7,600, I think he'll be really popular, and I think he's a great mid-range play, super underpriced, I think. Same with Frozen at 7,400. And then my favorite value from this matchup is Wazik at 6,800. So I think all 3 of those are viable. I never really consider Chris J or Kerrigan just because they're not really that great of DFS players. On Dignitas' side, Halzerk is viable. Forrest is viable. After that, I'm not really considering Get Right or Freiberg. So I think this game has a lot of value to it, just in terms of like players I think that are underpriced based on their ability, and that we have Mouse being the biggest favorite on this slate. Again, we're not playing the favorites for um, wanting the sweep bonus and wanting that. We're targeting Moose here for them being a favorite against a team who hasn't played very much lately, and that their best players are underpriced. Our next game is Astralis and NIP. NIP looked pretty poorly the first couple matches at DreamHack, and then looked better their last one against Ents. So now we get Astralis back, and Astralis is really interesting. We all know that Glaive took a break, and he was their IGL. He was their mastermind behind it, highly regarded on the team. And Device was very open about saying that, it was really hard without him, especially I think when they played at Nuke against G2, and just said that they haven't really practiced with Magisk being the IGL and being able to talk through everything. So now we have Astralis here with Device, Magisk, Dupree, Yugi. So I think those are the ones that we are, considering. And then Zipix is also out, as if you notice here. They have Snappy listed down here at 4K. I'd have to look into it a little bit deeper, and maybe I'll send out a tweet about it. But he must be the next player in, and I think at 4K, I'd have to look at his underlying stats to see if that's someone that's viable. But I don't really know on this type of slate if you need a 4K player, because you're not getting a sweep bonus, you're not getting any extra things like that. Rounds not played. I think Device is obviously the number one target, and he will have to step up even more with Zipix out. Magisk, I just don't really love him in a tight matchup. And this matchup is Astralis is only a -135 favorite. Dupree is still, even to me, a little bit more expensive than I prefer too. So, and again, that's comparing it to how close he is to Alu, how close he is to Zaiwu, how much more expensive he is than Ropes and Frozen. So I think my only target probably from Astralis is going to be Device. On the NIP side, which this is, leaning to be a fairly competitive game, I think you can consider Nock and Plopsky. But after that, I'm kind of passing on the rest of NIP. We haven't seen Hampus play very well. Twist has typically been the worst player on their team, even when Lekro was on the team. So our last matchup is Mad Lions and Fnatic. Fnatic coming in as a -145 favorite. Again, this is one map, so don't put all your eggs into the odds here. But I do think Fnatic probably comes in hoping to continue some of their little rust they've gotten off, and they're bouncing back. Brawlin feels too cheap at 8,000, but again, you're only getting one map out of him, so I think that's where you have to start making your decisions. Where I'd prefer to probably pay up for Device and Zaiwu than shove in Brawlin. But that might be a great play. He's typically their top fragger, so I always do like Brawlin. Crims has been playing amazing lately, kind of getting back to older form that he kind of went on that cold streak at Road to Rio. So I do love Crims too at 7,600. He's going to be kind of a deciding probably player where you're deciding between him and Frozen or him and Ropes, unless you're going to play all three. JW at 6,600 is kind of a pass for me, because normally he might play really well one map, poorly the next, and then you're hoping for the sweep bonus if you're playing for a heavy favorite on Fnatic. For Mad Lions, Boobski is viable, but I'm not really targeting him here, or even Mad Lions in cash. And normally when I'm talking about who I'm targeting, I'm talking about mainly cash. I think in GPP, especially in the best of ones, just leveraging a full stack against the team is definitely viable. But I do think in a best of 1-2 that you're only getting that one map, it's probably better to spread out your ownership on teams rather than three stacking a team where they all three might not maximize their abilities in just one map. So I think that there is definitely some strategy and thought behind that. The rest of Mad Lions, we're not really even considering. Sush is sometimes he's viable at 7,000 if you're stacking Mad Lions. All right, let's move on to our next slate here. If we can see it. Let's see. This one is a 3-game slate that we get a little different pool. Our NA teams here. I'm just going to go over the odds here. The first one is Furia and MIBR, who played recently, and Furia just rolled them over basically. And then we get Fallen priced at 9,600. So I think the 3 targets here, or picking at least probably 2 of them on this 3-game slate, would be Henny, Yuri, and Quesarado. Quesarado's price has actually gone to the cheapest of the 3, where he's typically been at the top. Again, that's based more on recent performance than it is on the actual player's ability. So I think those 3 are certainly viable. MIBR I would consider in GPPs. Furia is a -200 favorite here. Our next game is GenG and Chaos. Zeppa at 10,200. He is awesome, and he has been really fun to watch. Stepping up to the tier 1 level and playing some of these big matchups. I'm sure his upset against Team Liquid will be one of his, is one of the top of his career highlights already. But I think here GenG is a -235 favorite, the biggest on the slate. I think the pricing is really wrong here. I think Automatic, Bentet, and Kusta are all underpriced. I think Automatic will be one of my first cash plays in, along with 2 of the Furia players for sure, along with one other player from 100 Thieves that has been a pretty popular play lately. So Zeppa and GPP, sure, not considering him in cash. Automatic, Bentet, and Kusta are my favorite targets here for GenG. On to the last game with 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses. We have pricing that is, I'm not really sure how to explain it. The most expensive player in this game is 7,400. I get it, it's basically a pick'em, but we have a 1 map, and the best players are going to be JKS, who's going to be one of my first players in my cash lineup. Breeze is also a really good player at 7,400. These 2 teams just recently played, and it went to 3 maps. So I think this one, if you're trying to take a side on it, we'd have to look at the map bans and where the maps came out. But 100 Thieves rolled them over in the first in Vertigo, I think, and then Evil Geniuses rolled over them at Overpass. And then now I forgot what the decider was, but I think that one went into overtime. I think it was Nuke. So I think if you see something similar to that, you're going to see a really competitive matchup. And I think at that point, then you might want to grab at least 2 players from this game, even if you take 1 from each side. In the top 4, even top 5, J-Keem's been awesome lately too. So you got J-Keem, JKS, Breeze, Gratisfaction. I think all of them are viable. But the pricing on this slate is pretty astonishing, to be honest. I don't think on the late slate you really need to play anybody below J-Keem in any of these teams. Because I think if you start out with JKS, start out with Yuri, start out with Quesarado or Henny, and then look to play any of the GenG players like Automatic and Kusta or Bentet, then you will easily find yourself a nice balanced lineup. And you can actually pay up for captain. You can pay up for Yuri or pay up for Quesarado or Henny at captain. So again, I don't think it's optimal to play all 3 Furia in cash just because it's only a 1 map. It's going to be really hard for a lot of them to each have 25 kills if they beat MIBR 16 to 10 in the map. So they probably need overtime to really maximize a lot of that potential. So I do think you could probably play a couple, but also playing a lot of guys from that 100 Thieves EG matchup that seems to be what will likely be the most competitive. I think that will be part of planning your strategy for tomorrow's slates. So that's all I got here today. I'm kind of excited just for a change up in the style and what you're watching and looking for, because you're going to get that 1 map a tiny break, and the next teams are on the server. So you're kind of getting that rapid change, which is going to be fun from a viewer standpoint. Not have much lag time in between. So good luck tomorrow. Hit the subscribe button below. Go to fsidfs.com if you want to sign up for our Discord channel for free and get core plays for all the slates. We also have 2 showdowns tomorrow, so that will be fun to dive into those as well. Thanks a lot for listening.